Last week when I said the White Tower was the Tower of Sexual Tension, I did not expect to be, made so explicitly correct this episode. Cause y'all, that was hot. I was very hot. I'm gonna be okay. I promise you I'm gonna be okay. It took me a second, and I think you all know exactly what I'm talking about, but whoo! Anyways, hello everybody, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Amazon's Wheel of Time show. This time, episode 6, The Flame of Tarvalon. And believe me, there was a lot of flames, if you know what I mean. But before we get to that, just a couple quick things before I get into my spoiler-filled breakdown and review. First off, for those of you who may be new to my reviews, I'm watching this show as someone who has not read the books. I am very excited to read the books once this season ends, but I'm reviewing this first season without having any knowledge from the books, so all I would ask is that you please not spoil anything in the comments, or at the very least give a spoiler warning so that I can kind of skip past it if you want to have conversations with other book fans down in the comments. And don't worry, I know many of you are like, Jesse, read the books. I will read them. I am very excited to. This, especially after this episode, because this episode might be a personal favorite of mine of the show so far. And just quick second thing that I wish to say, this is a little bit of a self-promotion sort of thing, but over on my main channel, Jessie Gender, for those of you who don't know, I have two channels. This is my secondary one where I do reviews and stuff like that, but I have a main channel, Jessie Gender, where I do sort of my big video essay type stuff, and this coming Friday, December 17th, I'm doing a really big video that is feature length, and I'm very excited about it. It's probably one of my personal best, at least in my opinion, one of my personal best videos that I've ever done, and I'm really just trying to get it promoted because I don't know how well it's going to do in the algorithm, giving it its length and the fact that the topic is on sex in Star Trek and sex in science fiction, and Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek in general. I think it's a really cool video, as I said. I'm very proud of it, but I'm a little bit worried about the algorithm, so please check it out. Come join me for the premiere on December 17th. I'm just very proud of this video, and I want to get as many eyes on it as humanly possible. All right, enough self-satisfaction out of the way. Let's talk about other people satisfying themselves in this episode. Again, I'm sorry, this episode was the thing. Getting into it though, we start off the episode with a kind of origin story about Suwan, the Flame of Tarvalon, getting to see her as a little child with her father. This is an incredibly adorable sequence that just very quickly and evocatively made us understood her background, that she was not someone who came from like this high priestess privilege, but someone who did come from this like small background and also like had to sacrifice because of her father. And it was a very sweet and very sad and moving piece that only lasted a few seconds and very much humanized her as a character. Because if we had just met her in the next scene where she's just the leader of the Aes Sedai, she very quickly could have come across as like, oh, privileged woman who was just like, oh, I'm gonna yell at people. But this just like instantly let us kind of get a little kind of clue into who she actually is and the actual humanized person behind that leadership role. And I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Also, I should note in this scene, I couldn't help but thinking about how this entire segment was basically doing the story of Man of Steel, but better. Like her father is basically Pa Kent, who's not like an idiot being like, maybe you shouldn't use your powers and let me die sort of thing. He's more like, no, go off, go save yourself, but yeah, I'll protect myself. It's like, it's the same exact concept, but done so much better instead of just letting Superman let his father get killed by a tornado. Anyways, I just couldn't help but think about it, but it was just like, this is how Man of Steel should have gone, regardless. Anyways. But then we get into what I've been waiting for on this show, the Flame of Tarvalon scene, and getting to really see the inner politics of the White Tower. And we get to see her introduced as an adult and basically coming in and being like, what the hell has been going on here? Also in this scene, we like get to see the entire like council of Aes Sedai. Someone turned up the saturation bar in that room because dang, it looked beautiful and like poppy and bright. I loved it. But I loved all the sequences that happened here. And again, getting to understand the Flame of Tarvalon, Suwan, a little bit deeper throughout all of her decisions here. First, we get Logain being brought in front of her and him being a complete and utter jerk and asshole to her. But I really love that she instantly sees through that and understands like, oh, you want me to kill you. You want me to make you a martyr, and also so you don't suffer. And she sees right through that and is like, no. You're going to suffer, and you're going to live out your days, and I'm not going to murder you. You're going to go insane. And I love that because it shows that she's smart. It shows that she is very hard line and, like, not willing to let things go. And it just, like, clearly evoke just her sense of authority and her intelligence. But then we get her turning her ire on Liandrin and the other Aes Sedai, like Moraine, because of the fact that they had gentled Logain, and then Leandrin, of course, facing the brunt of this as the Red Aes Sedai, being a huge jerk. And Moiraine actually stands up for her at a few moments, saying like, hey, you know, we all decided this sort of thing. And Suan basically is like, no, I'm going to blame Leandrin for this. But then Leandrin is like, oh, well, fine, if you're going to do that, well, Moiraine also did stuff too. She brought Night and Eve, and you never said anything about Night and Eve, and she had all this strength, and she's hiding things in front of us. And I also love that every single moment that Leandrin spoke, Moiraine just basically had like this smile of like, this bitch. Every single time that she spoke, it was really wonderful. I'm loving her acting this entire season, and these scenes just really proved that to me. I also like Suwan saying that our laws are not here to protect us, they're here to protect people from us. And I'm like, that's an ideology I can totally get behind. Like, these laws are here to protect the people, not us, from abusing our power. And I really like that sort of ideology here. But then she turns her ire on Moiraine and really just pushes her to say, like, tell us where you've been. What have you been going on? And Moiraine just, like, it says, I can't do that, and has to, like, basically bow down in front of her, but will not reveal what's going on. Again, they're showing, like, this power that she has, and even Moraine's respect for her. We'll get to that more in just a few seconds. So that scene was great, but then we get our sequences of Moiraine going out and finding our adventurers, the rest of our crew, who have finally made it all to Tarvalon. She first goes off to find Mat and Rand tries to defend her from gentling, at least as he thinks, Mat, but then when Mat tries to pull a dagger on her, she realizes that that was the dagger that he had taken from the ancient city, and that was what was corrupting him, not the fact that he can channel. And I did not think about this. A lot of you pointed out in the comments last week, and I was like, oh, that's probably what it is. But I had guessed that Mat wasn't channeling, that he wasn't going crazy from that, and that was sort of like setting us up for a misdirect. And so I loved that there was clear payoff here, that Mat had other stuff going on. It probably hints to world building stuff that we'll get to later on, like what this cursed dagger is. I'm curious if that dagger will come back up in future instances. But I liked that subversion of that idea here, and that there's other crap going on here, and that Moiraine puts her life at risk. And I also noticed that like Alan was also like suffering when she did stuff too, so there's that bond of feeling pain between the two of them. And then I liked the scene afterwards where Rand and Moiraine kind of had a connection moment where Rand's just like, thank you for saving him, and Moraine's like, you know, you should have told me this, you should have told me this, and Rand's like, you can just say thank you. And it does show that Moiraine does on some level care about these people, that she's not there to just be like, she will use them as we talk about later on in the episode, but she is human. She's not like a complete jerk, and I liked that little humanizing moment for her. And then I also liked her when Night and Eve showed up, that she calls out Night and Eve and saying, Mat was suffering, you should have brought me here instantly. And it's kind of pushing Night and Eve into this sort of situation of like starting to realize that she's being a bit full of herself. Again, more on that in just a second. I'm loving the characterization and the subtle characterization just weaved throughout this entire episode. But then we get a sexy bath time scene that apparently all fantasy stuff needs to have now since The Witcher, which I'm not complaining about. And Moiraine basically apparently has meetings in tubs, which again, if I could do it, I would do it too. And she meets with the head of the Blue Aes Sedai, who's basically like, hey, I want you to stay in the tower this entire time. And Moraine's like, ah, crap, I can't have that. And then we get Moiraine going to find Perrin and Egwene. And it was interesting here. There was a moment here where when she first meets Egwene, and Egwene tells her about Perrin and the fact that he can glow and that he can control wolves, and Moiraine kind of being kind of scared about that and saying, don't tell anybody. One interesting note here was that Moiraine did not reveal to Egwene that she had already seen Rand and Mat. Now, maybe this was like an editing problem or out of order, but I kind of read it as like her lying to Egwene to put Egwene a little bit on edge so that she can draw out a little bit more trust and information from her. And it's like a very small thing, but I really liked that Moiraine kind of did a little subtle lie here in order to manipulate information. It just kind of shows how subtly clever she is in these instances. So I like that. But then this brings us to the hottest scene in the entire episode, because oh my gosh, we're gonna talk about this. So Moiraine is kind of hanging out in her room. Lan comes in, and Lan says, you know, you've been hiding your bond from me, sort of their connection and her emotions. And you see that she's isolating herself a little bit from Lan, saying, you need to focus on this other stuff. And I like that it shows like she's kind of pulling away from him. And we've seen this bond between Warder and Aes Sedai be very sexual and romantic. But I like that it showed that she's a little bit distant from here, leading into the next scene where she does this kind of teleporter thing to the Flame of Tarvalon's old town or something like that. Maybe it's an illusion. Maybe it's like an actual teleport to where the Flame of Tarvalon lived. But it turns out Moiraine and the Flame of Tarvalon are lesbian lovers. And oh boy, is it hot as hell. Like the moment where Moraine's like, get down on your knees, I'm like, oh. It's like, damn, Damn. Jokes aside, though, this whole sequence was just absolutely wonderful, where you get to the reveal, like, oh, they're actually working together, that all of that was for show, what we saw earlier, and that they're both kind of looking for the same thing. They're both learning about the dragon, and that they had seen some sort of prophecy. We got an allusion to that earlier, that there would be a dragon coming soon, and so that's why they're both looking, and that they're being kind of in cahoots here. And Moraine is kind of worried about what if she's wrong? What if there's 5 dragons? You know, what if the dragon has 3 heads, from Game of Thrones sort of thing? This whole question about prophecy and what does it mean, and them supporting each other, and Moraine suggests that you need to exile me in order to keep me from being stuck here and preventing me from doing my work. All of this, I think, was absolutely wonderful, because what it does throughout this entire episode not only humanizes Moraine and gives us more depth to Moraine's character, but also, like, this instantaneously, all the work that had been built up this episode really made me feel that Siuan had been incredibly humanized. Like, in one episode, the characterization for her is so depthful. We get to see that she comes from this sort of not privileged background. We get to see her be strong and intelligent and smart. We get to see her being subversive and knowing how to play politics. We get to see her caring for Moraine with things like pufferfish and like these little inside jokes that don't get explanations of where they come from, but you get to see like there's this long history between the two of them. It's just, she was so beautifully humanized in just one episode that I'm like, the writing on her character was top notch. And I'm in awe of how well they did that. After this, we have Moraine walking around the White Tower, where she runs into Leandrin, and Leandrin's like, oh, you're going to see those kids you've been looking for? I'm gonna be a big jerk. And I love Moraine just like instantly like, I know that you're sleeping with a dude, I could get him killed, shut the fuck up, and then just walks away, and Leandrin's like, oh snap. I just love that. That was great. But then we get the reunion of Gwen and Night and Eve. This was very sweet. Moraine getting to just show the two of them together, and I thought that was absolutely wonderful. But then Moraine takes them both to see Siuan. This was another fantastically written scene that I just adored. Again, it not only gave Siuan like a bit of characterization where she's just like joking a little bit with them and like getting to meet them, but also impressing upon both Egwene and Night and Eve the power that being an Aes Sedai and the responsibility that comes with being an Aes Sedai, and that you don't always get to choose your path in these instances. And I love the like subtle different characterization between Egwene and Night and Eve, like Egwene like bowing really quickly and Night and Eve just doing nothing, and just shows the contrast and how much like I almost kind of want to say arrogance that Night and Eve have. Like, look, I'm sure that like she's very understandably pissed off at the Aes Sedai for how they treated her and her family, as we noted way back in the pilot episode. But there's a little bit of like, girl, calm down a little bit, like play a little bit of politics. But I certainly understand where she's coming from. So I just like the characterization of every person in the scene. But the best part of this scene was the subtext of it, because everything that she was saying to Night and Eve and Egwene was definitely having an effect on Moraine as well. And they can just see, and her acting is just so excellent here, because you can just see the subtleties of how it's affecting her, and it's not like reading completely through. It's not like she's smiling at the moment, but you can like see moments where it just like hits her, that like she's hearing Siuan kind of mention things that like hit her as like the responsibility. We can't always get to be with who we want to be and things like that, and Moraine just sort of like having to hide that and feel that internalized. Fantastic acting throughout all of that, just absolutely wonderful. And then this brings us to kind of the final part of the episode, where Moraine is brought before the entire council again, and she is sentenced to exile. Everyone turns her back on her, and we, again, some brilliant subtle acting between Moraine and Siuan here. When they're doing the exiling, you can see like Siuan just has like a little twitch on her mouth, and Moraine just like is like trying to hold back tears, not only because she's being exiled, which was her idea even, but from having to leave Siuan and like just having to hold that within, and Siuan like doing the same thing but having to be much more stoic about it. It's just again, I said it already, but like the acting is so freaking fantastic through all of this. But then Moraine gets sent away, and she brings all of our crew together along with Loial, who I am so glad that Loial's coming along. I don't entirely understand why Loial's coming along. I know that he's like, you know, he was asked to favor Burn Moraine, but I'm like, he's literally, they choosing to go into this teleporter thing and go to the Darklands to face the Dark One. They're basically going to Mordor, essentially. And I'm like, Loial! You're just a simple bookkeeper. What are you doing? It's just it was a little bit surprising that he was coming along with them, I should say. But I'm not complaining too much, because I do like his character quite a bit. And I loved this scene where she starts to explain to them what's going on. She's again, we're basically going to go to Mordor. We're going to face the Dark One, which I'm like, this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. I mean, I know that it's not a good idea, mostly because, like, I know there's more books in this series, so I'm assuming they're not going to kill the Dark One right now. So this just, I'm assuming someone's going to die, something's going to go wrong, that this is going to end up very, very badly for all of our characters going here. But I also liked that when someone asked, like, when Rand asked, what's going to happen if to the people who aren't the dragon facing the Dark One, and she kind of just doesn't tell the truth, because we saw earlier that she said anyone who gets between the dragon and the Dark One will die. She knows this. And here she just says, we don't know. And it's like, come on. She's not being entirely truthful because she wants them to come with her. Again, I love that the show is not explicitly stating like, oh, she's lying here. But it's just like a subtle like, oh, she's keeping things from them in order to get them to do what she wants, because she's a little bit of a manipulator. Even if she's totally humanized as a person, she is manipulating them. And I like that the show is showing that and not telling us that, and it's fantastic. But then they all step into the teleporter thingy, and Matt decides to stay back, because Matt, being smart, says, I choose life. And you know what? Like I said, maybe this is a smart idea in universe in terms of like, let's just go and take down the Dark One when he's weak, but I'm very much here out of universe being like, Matt's the smart one here. I'm with Matt. Like, don't do this. This seems dumb. So, and that's basically where we end out our episode. So, this is easily my favorite episode of the season so far. It is showcasing not only the fantastic writing and characterization that have been building up this entire season, but also gives us this wonderful politics and starts to really flesh out this world. It starts to bring us into the end game for this season as well, with them going to face the Dark One, as well as the fantastic, oh my god, amazing acting on display here. Like, this was a top-notch episode on pretty much every single level, and this has just got me even more excited for this show and even more excited to read the books eventually. So I am so pumped about this show going forward into its final 2 episodes. I hope you all are as excited as I am. This is fantastic. This show has quickly skyrocketed with this episode to being one of my favorite shows of this year. The past 2 episodes I've been enjoying. It's been good, but this one just proved to me, like, oh, there is some talent on display. But that's enough gushing for me, because I could gush for a really long time about this. What do you think about this episode? Did you like it? Did you hate it? I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget that I have that Sex and Star Trek video coming out next Friday, December 17th. It'll be premiering at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm very excited about it. It'll be up afterwards, but if you can join me for the premiere, I would love to have you in the live chat. But beyond all of that, just thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.